Achieving a gorgeous grin from home isn't a total mystery with Bite Clear aligners. Just don't be surprised if all of your sleuthing friends start asking, "What's your secret?" Begin by ordering your at-home impression kit today for only $14.95. Bite Clear aligners are doctor-directed and delivered to your door. Treatment costs thousands less than braces. Plus, they offer flexible financing, accept eligible insurance, and you can pay with your HSA FSA. Get 80% off your impression kit when you use code WONDERY at Byte.com. That's BYTE.com. Start your confidence journey today with Byte.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Just gonna go with it. And welcome back to Little Cuts, our weekly minisode where we dig into the things that we've been watching recently and playing too. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth. And Terry and I finally met in person.
We sure did.
It was the best.
It was the best. So many hugs.
So many hugs.
So many hugs.
I have to see. Well, now I have to see you again soon when I'm not getting married and like running around
I know,
like an
when,
insane person.
When I hadn't had like an 18-hour day from hell.
So bummer. But you were there. That's all that mattered. And you were. Steve was like, "I'm sorry. When was Terry wearing that cool sweater the whole time?" I'm like, "No, he wore it just to get a picture with me, and then he took it."
I did.
It
was too hot. I'm always way too hot.
Yeah. But also, I guess, so besides my wedding, this week we're talking about an epic cringe comedy, which is a TV sequel to a movie, Scary White Women, an upcoming multiplayer horror game, and time-traveling bears.
Yes, we got a lot. But before we do, I also have a story.
Okay, yes.
I obliquely shared on Twitter at one point, and it was a blink and you miss it moment on Twitter. But so I wake up last week, and my phone is on Do Not Disturb for the entire night when I go to bed, and I wake up and I have 4 missed texts and 4 phone calls from my roommate, who is downstairs. I live upstairs, she's downstairs. And they are a progression of there's someone outside. Please wake up. I don't know what to do. I've called the police. And 4 missed calls. And a tag on Twitter. And I find out that I slept through this entire thing, that she woke up at 4 a.m. because Riggins, her dog, who sleeps in her bed, was growling nonstop, and she had gone up to go use the restroom, and she thought she heard a man's voice outside, but she couldn't quite tell where the voice was coming from, and so she let Riggins outside to go do his thing and pee and everything, and he just would not have it. He ran to the corner of the yard where there's a fence and just was barking. She could not get him inside. She turned on the light to see what was over there that was causing Riggins to go ape shit, and then she sees a man stumble out of the shed. And her immediate response, which makes sense, was, "What the fuck, dude?" And I guess he was drunk or something, and his response was, "I don't have a place to go." And apparently he tried to go up to the fence, because like our yard is like half fenced and half not in the backyard, and the shed is in the not fenced part. And he stuck his hand into the fence's slats, and I think Riggins bit him. But yeah, that was what I missed like 4 days before going to see Mary Beth for her wedding.
Did the cops come?
Yeah, apparently the cops came. And,
you slept through this whole
went
thing?
and checked out there. Slept through the whole thing. You might ask yourself, why didn't she knock on my door? Because that's the question I asked her. And she said, well, I didn't want to wake you. And I'm like, 4 texts, 4 phone calls, a tag on Twitter. Didn't want to wake me. Just wake me next time. Anytime there is a creepy ass man outside, please wake me. So yeah.
So what is this epic?
Oh my god, yeah. So epic cringe comedy. I watched Triangle of Sadness.
Okay. How was that?
Loved.
Really?
Absolutely
okay.
loved.
Okay.
It's 2.5 hours, and at the end of it, I wanted to sit down and watch it again.
Okay.
It was so good.
Oh.
I do wish that the trailers didn't like spoil everything, because the trailers basically
I haven't watched the trailer.
It's a story in Oh, you haven't?
Mm-mm.
So it's a story in 3 parts, and I'm not going to go into each 3 parts in case, like you said, you haven't seen the trailer, but it's basically, it follows, for the most part, it follows this pair of models, Carl and Yaya, who are dating, and they like get an influencer pass to go on this luxury cruise, and so we sort of see their life a little bit before the cruise, where he's like auditioning for to be a model for Balenciaga. And there's this little funny bit about fashion, about how like, well, you know, Balenciaga is dead serious, we're looking down on you, whereas something that's cheap like H&M is all smiley. And so one of the interviewers is like, now Balenciaga, and so he like, and he's like, H&M, Balenciaga, and H&M, and Balenciaga. And it's like this little bit of funny humor on fashion, and that continues throughout the rest of the movie, where they get on the boat, and we follow them. We follow a bunch of people that are on this really expensive cruise, and we follow the people working it. And it becomes this sort of like, how did I describe it? I think on Letterboxd I said that it's like a cringe comedy of forced politeness gone awry, because things start to happen on this boat where like they run into bad weather and people start projectile vomiting and the boat starts rocketing. Like it is like, it's just so funny. It's so funny. And the places it goes and the way it like tackles social hierarchies is really interesting, and who has power in what form of it. And I love this movie so much. It's by Ruben Östlund. I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
He did The Square.
He did, which I've not seen any of his movies, because he did The Square and he also did Force Majeure.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of it. So the thing is, I haven't seen any of them. I know of them, but I haven't seen any of them either.
This made me want to go watch them. Like, this was so good. This was so good.
Okay, at 2.5 hours, it needs to be that long?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So, because
I was like doubtful, but
because I'm off. We're recording this on Wednesday, and I'm off the rest of the week. So I want to see Tar, and I want to see this, and so I'm trying to figure out what to see at near me, because I only want to see. I
highly recommend this one.
Okay.
It's really good. And funny story. So I went to go see it at Alamo, and one of the actresses who plays she plays Abigail. Her name is Dolly De Leon. They had an interview with her prior to the movie, and she was talking about. They were asking her what movie she would like to like create of like a remake, and she's like, well, it's the movie that scarred me for life as a kid. And she mentioned The Exorcist, and I'm like, okay, we've already covered it, but Dolly De Leon, if you want to come on our podcast and talk about The Exorcist,
we'll do it again.
Please do. She was really good in the movie.
Hell yeah. I really want to see it. I'm like trying to play catch up on like movies and stuff that are out because I feel like I only ever see horror, and I want to try to see things that are a little bit not in that lane.
Mm-hmm. And this reminded me how much I missed like adult oriented dramas and comedies that are not like horror and not blockbusters.
Yeah.
Like this really did it for me.
Hell yeah. Okay.
Let's talk about witches though.
Witches. So I watched the movie that is called Two Witches.
Okay.
And this is directed by Pierre Sigarides. I'm so sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. But this is an Arrow release. I've been hearing a little bit about it. I know that a few people that we know, including Joe Lipsett, really liked it. So I thought, let's give it a try. It's pretty good.
Is it?
Yeah. So the movie is split up into two parts. Similar. It's like split up into two parts. Then it's following a witch trying to get what is hers in very violent ways, and there are two parts to the story that involve the witch and then her granddaughter. And I'm trying to think of how to describe it, because it's like a very weird atmospheric movie where like it almost feels like a Suspiria or a Phenomena, in the way that the acting is a little bit stilted and it's not always great, but the visuals are really fucked up, and like the whole conceit is very fucked up, and there's a lot of like very loosely kind of discuss lore, but not really. It's more of like you're thrown into the middle of the story and you're kind of just figuring out what it is. But there's a lot of visuals of babies being eaten.
Oh, gnarly.
It's much more upsetting than I thought it was going to be, and it's really, really well done. If you're looking for a good witch movie, I recommend something like this. Like if you didn't like the Suspiria 2018 remake as much, I would try this out, because it definitely still has Suspiria vibes, but much more disturbing and much more just like generally upsetting imagery. And I watched it. This was the only horror movie I watched on Halloween, because that was the day after our wedding and I slept for most of that day, but I watched Two Witches, and it was a very good Halloween movie to watch. The second half is my favorite. The stories are interconnected, but like the second one I think is even more well done and even more upsetting in some of the ways the story twists and turns. So I think it's playing on the Arrow player on Arrow right now. So if you're looking for like a good, grotesque, scary witch movie, I think this is definitely one you should check out.
Cool. Yeah, I have the screener. I got it like the week before your wedding, and I ran out of time to watch it. So I'm glad to hear that it's really good. Side note, I think we can get the director on.
Ooh. Yeah, I liked it quite a bit. A lot of the practical effects are really good. So
awesome. I'd love to hear that.
Yes. But then a TV sequel to a movie.
Yes. So we talked about James Gunn two, I guess, right?
Slither, aka Heidi Klum's fucking worm costume on Halloween.
Yes! Oh my god, I loved her worm costume, by the way. That was so fantastic. But yeah, so we talked about James Gunn, and then I'd been meaning to watch Peacemaker, and Kate Miles, a friend of the show, and Patreon subscriber, like reached out to us and was like, hey, if you hadn't seen Peacemaker, you should watch it if you like James Gunn's stuff. And I've been meaning to, and so on my trip to go see you, I downloaded Peacemaker, and I downloaded Cabinet of Curiosities, and I'll talk about Cabinet of Curiosities, I think, next episode.
Yeah, good, because
I've watched all of it.
I'll have them all finished by next time we talk.
Because I'm only about 4 episodes in. But yeah, so I watched Peacemaker, and let me tell you, this show is everything that I love to see from James Gunn. It has, so it basically picks up where the Suicide Squad left off.
Okay.
And you've seen Suicide Squad?
I have seen
right?
the Suicide Squad. I have not watched Peacemaker, but yes.
So, spoiler alert, Peacemaker dies at the end.
Yeah.
But he doesn't die.
Yeah.
And he is in a hospital recovering, and then he returns home, and he discovers that there is like this black ops team that is like a fragment of the people that were working for Amanda Waller, as well as a couple newcomers, have this new mission that they need him for. And again, it's this similar kind of conceit to the Suicide Squad, where it's like you have a bomb in your head, you're either going to go back to jail, or you're going to do what we say, or we're going to blow your head off. And so he gets wrapped up in another big project. Like, it's funny because like there's a running joke about how like Project Starfish was actually the project about in the Suicide Squad, which is actually about a giant starfish. And so this project is called Project Butterfly. And he's like, what, are we fighting Mothra? And he's like, I need a jetpack if I'm fighting Mothra. And like, you're not fighting Mothra. And he's like, but can I have a jetpack anyway? But like, it has this sort of like, it's all of the episodes are written by James Gunn, and he directs a lot of them, cool. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And it has like, this is like James Gunn's humor. Like we kind of talked about how I was a little sad to see his like edges sort of sanded down for Marvel. Well, they're not. This is like classic James Gunn humor. And I think fans of like fans of the Suicide Squad will enjoy this humor as well as it continues on. It's a little edgy, but it still is full of heart. It's about found family. It's about these very disparate people having to come together for this mission that is about saving the world again. But it's like, it's funny. It's it somehow makes Peacemaker understandable. Like, cause like part of the thing is he wakes up and he finds out that everyone thinks that he's a racist and everyone thinks that he's this horrible person. And you start to like unravel the story of him, and you find a little bit about his like life as a child, where his father was the super villain who is also a white supremacist, and you start to like unravel bits and pieces about his past and him coming to terms with what it means to be Peacemaker as a real person. And it's actually quite funny. I started to watch it and then I just couldn't stop, so I was kind of glad in some ways that I had like a long trip and long flight, because I watched the entirety of it.
Silver linings, I guess.
I guess so.
I really want to watch it. I'm behind on all things television, to be perfectly honest.
Same.
I don't know what TV is.
What is TV? I don't know her. But it's really good. Okay. I highly recommend it.
Isn't he bisexual?
Yeah, it's a little throwaway comment. Okay, because
I remember people talking a lot about it on Twitter.
It's not even a big thing. There is queer representation on it though.
Love that.
Danielle Brooks, who was in
Orange is
the New Black.
Yeah,
she was Tasty.
Yeah.
She is in it, and she is in a committed, happy. I think she's married to a woman. I don't think they're dating. I think they're married, and she's So there's queer rep in it.
Cool.
And it's quite lovely.
Hell yeah. Okay.
Oh boy. Speaking of white supremacy, let's talk about scary white women.
Okay. So I watched Soft and Quiet, which Terry, you talked about South by Southwest, because that's where it premiered. It is coming out this week. Is it this week? It's coming out soon.
I think so.
I think it's coming out on Friday. I've finally seen it. And I, fuck that movie. Fuck it. Fuck that movie. It's directed by Beth D'Arejo. She is, I'm trying to figure out. She's Chinese American and Brazilian. So she's a woman of color who's also, and making this movie about a group of the most horrible women on the planet. And so basically this is about a group of women who are like-minded, and by like-minded is they all are Nazis. And they have come together for the Daughters of Aryan Unity, the first meeting. And it's them all talking about just how they are so put upon by people of color and how people of color are the worst. And it kind of escalates from there. into bad. It's shot all in one take in real time, which is it's insanely well done and nauseating and incredibly impressive, and definitely ramps up the tension quite a bit. But it's one of these movies that I'm not quite sure what you're trying to get across is going to be shown to the right people. Because this is a movie about the evils of white women. Thank God. It's a movie trying to expose that, like, look, white women are just as bad, if not worse. They know how to weaponize their place in society to seem completely innocuous and then use it to immediately fuck over people of color. And it is very much an important thing, but my concern, I guess, and maybe it shouldn't be my concern, but, like, I think a lot of people who are going to watch this are going to be people who are like, we already know all this. And I think it's going to be, what's hard is for me to then be like, so what, in watching it, like, what point does it serve? Like, it's brutalizing people of color and giving a spotlight to Nazis and pointing it out, which I think is incredible. But it's like, it exists in this very weird gray area that I think is the point of the movie. I think it just gets my wheels turning in my head. I'm like, well, who's this for? Like, are any white supremacists actually going to see this and care? Like, people are going to watch it and just be like, we already know all this. But then again, if we already know all this, it doesn't mean we shouldn't not talk about it. And especially because it's from the perspective of a woman of color. It's not like a white person like, look, see, I understand that white women are bad, but it's like, no, this is how white women are. And I think it is. I think my consensus is it's an important movie, but it's a really horrible movie to watch. Because it's just like, it's a lot of just like really fucked up rhetoric being spewed the whole time from people who are like moms. And I think that it's that shocking imagery, but then also like I've worked in spaces with people like this, and it's like it seems like it's taken to an extreme, and the end is taken to an extreme, but a lot of it isn't that extreme. Except for the apple pie with a swastika in it. That's pretty extreme.
Yeah.
Like, it's a movie I haven't been able to stop thinking about, which is a good thing. But I just have a lot of thoughts about, like, who is it for? And I think, yeah. Yeah,
I don't remember exactly what I said when I talked about this, and I have not seen it since then because I honestly have no desire to subject myself to it again, because it is definitely a watched once never again movie. So I apologize in advance if because I talked to Dax about it while we were at your wedding. So I apologize in advance if this ends up coming up.
You recorded soon enough, I don't have to watch it again. I'll just rely on my memory of it. Like, no, don't make me watch it again, please.
But what I do remember the most in terms of what you were saying about who the audience is that the thing that like jumped out at me is the way that the very beginning of the film incorporates a bunch of different perspectives in terms of like, well, this person is doing this. Like, it's not just like, these aren't people that are just like carving swastikas in people and lynching people, right? There's like a wide variety of racism going on here, to the point that you can actually see some things that like those who are cognizant of it can see as microaggressions, but that aren't in this movie, if that makes sense. So like, so there are people I think that are going to watch this and see some of themselves in the things that are being said, even if they themselves aren't necessarily racist. They will see some things in it that like pops out to them, like, oh, ooh, like uncomfortableness. And I think that's where some of the uncomfortableness lies for a white person watching this movie, is you start to see your complicity in white supremacy.
Oh yeah. And I also think that something else she addresses really well is that, like, and this, I won't spoil anything, but it goes to a point where it's like, oh, you thought this is what you wanted, but then when you're confronted with the reality of like the rhetoric that you're spouting will lead to this kind of violence. And when you are confronted with that violence, you no longer feel the way that you feel because you are being confronted with your actions, basically. So there's a couple people in the group that are like, oh, we'll fully go there and committing hate crimes, to people who are like, oh, I just believe these things, but I don't believe in violence, and realizing that.
Right.
I think there's a really interesting thing there, being like, oh, well, if you're going to spout these kinds of thoughts and like spread these words, like you are implicit in creating violence, or yes, words, but like you have a hand in the violence, and like you are leading to this. And I think it does like show consequences to people who maybe like have thought, or like have, realized that words actually do have meaning. And it's not just like a fun little like a little group where we make cakes and donuts and talk about why we don't like the colored people taking our jobs. Like, it's fascinating and disgusting. But
it's a very hard watch.
It's very hard. My favorite part of this whole movie is there's a part where something happens and they put a dog away, and before they leave this place upset, they let the dog back out, because it just really was this tiny little thing of like, white women will do anything for a little dog, but for people of color, they will do nothing. It's something.
Yeah. It's a hard watch.
It's a hard watch. The acting in it is incredible. Olivia Lucardi, who plays like a very bad character in this, was also in Candyland. So she's having quite a year of playing crazy characters, which is fascinating. So it's interesting to see her in these two movies so far. But yeah, that's Soft and Quiet. Watch at your own risk, everybody. And what is this upcoming multiplayer horror game?
So while I was at your wedding, or at least traveling to your wedding, maybe, I don't remember exactly when, Tony Kaufman, who is in our chat right now, was talking to me in DMs about how the Outlast Trials was doing its closed beta this weekend. And so I went out to Steam and I requested access to it, surprisingly got in, and then Halloween, after we went to go see Trick or Treat, because it's my tradition if you listen to our Halloween episode.
Hell yeah.
I got to play a little bit of it before the beta went away. And I'm not 100% sure what to think about the game yet. Because you've played or seen Outlast, right?
I've played Outlast, yeah.
You played Outlast?
Mm-hmm. The first one.
I thought you had. Yes. And so for those that don't know, you're like, it's basically almost like found footage-esque type idea. Like you are someone in an original game, you're like an investigator going into a mental hospital where like weird things are happening, and you have your camera. It has like night vision, and you're sort of trying to evade big
things,
ugly, horrible things that are trying to murder you, while also collecting evidence. And this game is the third, and it takes that premise and adds multiplayer to it.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm not 100% sure what I think about it.
Okay.
Because part of what like I really enjoyed about the Outlast games is that sort of sense of isolation and creeping dread that comes from it. You know, where it's like there's that adrenaline spike of being chased, but then you're also like on your own, defenseless. You have no one else to rely on. It's you with like an asylum of horribly mistreated, monstrous creations. So when you add like a multiplayer component to it, I think with the right group, it might be good. But like I was playing with random people, and someone was clearly streaming on Twitch and was just chatting to his room while trying to sneak around this level and solve things. So it was like it kind of took out that suspense. And I do think that when you add more people to a game that is so focused on trying to isolate you and make you feel underpowered and be like the opposite of a power fantasy. It's a little weird to sort of then gamify it where some people have like kits where you can heal people. One is a person that can stun things. Like you can add different like character classes kind of to your characters. And then you play with 4 people as you're trying to solve these tasks. And so I was never scared playing the game. There was a couple times there's like, oh shit, I'm being chased, I gotta go run. But it wasn't like the same sort of dread that I think is so effective in these Outlast games. And you can apparently play them solo. I didn't have the opportunity to try that with the time I had remaining. And I don't know how well it would be because the level seems very focused on multiplayer component of it. So I'm on the fence. I wanted to bring it up because it is it's a huge game. I love the Outlast series. I'm just not sure that taking this and sort of adding Dead by Dawn-esque type things, except you're not playing against other people. It's just co-op. So I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to feel about it. And I don't know about the replayability because we only got 1 level. It took us 45 minutes to get through the level. But like, how many levels are there going to be? How much replayability is there going to be to this? I don't know. But I wanted to bring it up because it's Outlast, man.
It's Outlast. That's just the thing, like, Outlast is not a multiplayer game in my head. It's all about you with your camera not being able to see anything and trying to find batteries and getting lost and confused by yourself. Like, it's all about the solitude of the game and, like, the lack of, like, your lack of ability to see and you're completely alone. I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, oh, everyone, like, the Dead by Daylight stuff is going really well and, like, the, what's it called? Oh... The one
like Evil Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre upcoming.
Yeah,
like Back for Blood.
Yeah, the one Siobhan, we interviewed her. Is that multiplayer?
Well, sort of. I mean, I think you can play it with.
Okay, yeah, you're right. Sorry, getting them all mixed up. But I feel like there's such a push now for multiplayer stuff. It's like, oh, we'll get back into multiplayer, and it's like, but that Outlast is not a game that is meant for in my head, and it sounds like. Because it was the beta, right? It was just the beta?
Yeah, it was a vertical slice of the game. We just got 1 level. It looks like there's things you can unlock by getting money for doing well in the mission. I'm just not sure. Like, maybe if I had, like, a core group of people that I was playing with, it would be a little bit better. But it was just really weird with, like, a Twitch guy just basically chatting to his chat the entire time. Like, it just...
I don't like playing online.
Kills any sense of dread.
I don't like playing online. I don't like playing any of that stuff. Like multiplayer, online multiplayer. I hate online multiplayer. Like that's why I like games like Outlast, because I didn't have to play with anybody, and I could play cool horror games by myself and not feel pressure to like be really good. Because I had a lot of experience getting embarrassed by like when I was younger, like boys be like, "You're bad at this," and I'm like, "I just don't play it as much as you do." So it's just
like I think. Like, I think it might be fun, like, if I were playing it with you and, like, a couple other people that, you know, like, know each other and are going to approach it with, like, the intent that it's meant to be played, you know what I mean? But I don't know. There's a added element of gamification, which seems weird to talk about a game that has gamification, because that's a game. But, like, that sort of extra level of meta gaming to it that I'm not 100% sure is going to work with Outlast. Because I think part of the reason why Dead by Dawn and all those other games are effective is because it's you versus another person.
Yeah.
Whereas this is just a co-op thing. And I'm like, how stale is this going to be to keep playing through that same level over and over again?
The co-op stuff with like Phantasmophobia, like that works because it does like it's like procedurally generated with like so it's the same couple of levels, but it's always a different combination of things. So it's like, okay, so what are you going to give us that'll make it feel... Because it's not... I don't know. A story-driven multiplayer game, to me, is not fun. I want to... Like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. I don't know how to describe it. I'm having a bad time formulating words. But you know what I mean.
I do. So, I don't know. We'll see. I'm like, cautious about it. Like, I do think that having a group of friends to play with might be kind of fun, but I don't know if it's gonna have the longevity of something like Dead by Dawn, because I think you're forcing multiplayer into a game that doesn't need it. But
yeah, exactly. Like, why make a game that was already single player into multiplayer. Whatever. Maybe they'll blow us away.
We'll see.
We'll see.
It played really well. Like, I was surprised at how
Well,
seamless and for a closed beta that it was. But because I've had bad experiences with betas before, so. But oh boy. Oh boy. Let's talk about time traveling bears, Mary Beth. What was our horror comedy of the week?
So our horror comedy of the week was the 2011 Joseph Kahn film Detention, which I had never seen before.
I saw it once, but I honestly, the only thing I remembered when I was watching this movie was the Cinderella costume, which I think is awesome.
Yes.
And the grizzly bear. That is literally the only thing that I was like, in my mind, most of the movie took place at detention. In here, it's like the last half of the movie takes place at detention. So like this was like a first watch for me.
I was so confused. I'm like, wait, this is not detention. Yeah, so what is this movie about, Terry?
Fuck if I know.
No, please tell me, because I don't know.
So, the movie is about if you were a writer and you decided to do Speed and then mainline a bunch of 90s and 80s teen horror movies and teen comedies, and then snorted some cocaine maybe and decided to write the script out of everything that you saw.
Yeah.
Is kind of what I think you get with Detention.
Yeah, it was basically all those things put in a blender, too. Yeah, so it takes place at Grizzly Lake, like your typical small, like shitty small town that you see in horror movies, middle of nowhere. Everyone hates high school. They've got the jocks, the nerds, our usual stuff.
I'm a bitch.
Oh my god. The H is for Hoobastank. Like, it was...
Hoobastank.
It's very funny watching this now, and, like, it's very 2011 in the way of that. Because I was the year I graduated high school. So...
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
So it was very funny, like, the roar, and, like, the way people were texting. Like, a lot of it was very 2011 on point, when I was like... Ugh. Oh, God. What a time. And... it's very much a time capsule of that time as well. I think it leans into, like, Scott Pilgrim territory a little bit in terms of, like, how it uses, like, graphics on screen. And I feel like that kind of goes away a little bit towards the end. Like, they kind of lose steam and, like, the crazy, like, kinetic, like, editing, comic book. Everyone's got crazy, like, a million different things happening on the screen. And, it has that Scott Pilgrim-y vibe in terms of, like, that energy level. But then we have a serial killer who is dressing up after a existing slasher movie from this world called Cinderella, which I would love to.
Which I have to say,
I would love to watch. I would love to watch Cinderella.
Me too.
I would watch that in a fucking heartbeat. But then
the killer outfit is awesome.
The killer outfit is awesome. The mask is so fucking cool. But then we also have a guy who said he had spliced with fly blood. And then there are...
I have fly blood in my veins, and he vomits up acid.
And then that was, like, never really addressed, ever. And then there's aliens that keep showing up. And then there's a time-traveling mascot outfit that one of the kids has just been turning into a time travel machine. And now they have to travel back in time to save the world because... Ione switched brains with her mom and then rejected
Freaky Friday with her mom.
And then
with time travel.
Said no to the principal who's played by Dane Cook as a child who then sets up off a bomb to blow up everything because he's mad. So he's basically an OG incel and is being prodded by one of he's an OG incel being prodded by another kid. So a bunch of them are time traveling, and I don't really understand how a lot of them are time traveling. I understand how 2 of them are because we see them get into the bear, but there's a couple other people who I really don't quite understand how they switched brains and how they ended up in the past and the future, and nothing really makes any sense at all. Like, it's kind of just... Yeah. I didn't really understand what was going on at all. But I had fun.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought up the incel part, because like the one thing that I thought was really smart about this is like the best friend, because there's a guy here who's like in love with the final girl, and they're best friends, and she's not interested in him like that, and it's this sort of like, it's this trope that we've seen throughout, again, teen comedies, the best friend that is secretly pining over his female best friend. And in here it actually digs into that character and says, this dude is actually an incel, because like his whole thing is he's being dejected, and so he wants to kill everything. Like it is incel before incel was even, I believe, a word that we used.
Yep.
And so it's interesting that is the villain of this movie. I actually really enjoyed that. But like I was 5 minutes in this movie and I was like, this movie is a lot. I
was exhausted a little bit at the beginning. I was like, did I turn this on at the right, like, am I watching the right version? Like it just automatically starts going, and she's like BITCH, and I'm like, is she real? Is she vlogging? Like I didn't understand, like, was she making a video for like an early YouTube? Like I hate you. I was so confused. It was just a lot of yelling, and
your lack of faith in the durability of Kesha is alarming.
With the acceptance, I was like, I'm personally insulted by that. Yeah, it was again, like it hits all of this. It's like you got like the serial killer cold open. Like you have a lot of these slasher bits, and I think it's really smart. I just think there's too much happening.
There's so much happening.
But people fucking love this movie. I was looking on Letterboxd, many people, and I was like, I didn't hate it, but I definitely didn't like love it. I feel like did I miss something? I think it might have just been a little bit too much. I think maybe it was just a little bit too chaotic for my current mind state, like post wedding.
It definitely was a very chaotic watch for me. When I had logged it back on Letterboxd, I realized that when I first watched it, I gave it a 2-star, and I'm not 100% sure if that was like a memory of it or not. And I don't think it's a 2-star film. I do think I actually did enjoy it. I think it's well made. I just think that there is an awful lot happening to the point that I just was having a hard time. We're trying to understand what is happening, and then all of a sudden, the jock in the movie who is obsessed with beating up Clapton.
I texted Terry just the word Clapton earlier, because I'm like, this kid played by Josh Hutcherson, Bread Boy PETA himself. Cutie patootie. His name is Clapton Davis, which is the most porn star name I've ever heard. But yes, anyway, the jock who's obsessed with beating up.
All of a sudden is like vomiting acid on helmets and getting his hands stuck to things that he shouldn't be stuck to. And then we get like a flashback where he encountered a meteor, so we have a little bit of like the 80s Blob, Night of the Creep type aspect of it, mixed with the Fly, because all of a sudden he has fly blood spliced in him. And his father, this part really made me laugh. His father's like, you can't have people see that you're a freak, and puts a TV on his hand.
Yeah,
as if like that's going to like...
I had to go back. I'm like, did I miss something? Like, did I... What? I didn't. It just... I mean, like, I applaud them for going for it, but... What?
There's a debate about vegetarianism that killed me in the film, with the Canadian guy named Gord, who ends up being like an alien. There's no way to actually spoil this movie, because like I honestly don't know. I don't know. I just don't know.
No, I don't. I don't either.
There were parts where, like, I'm just staring at the screen, and if you're not watching the video, you're not going to get it. Where I'm just like... And my roommate is laughing at me because she's seen this before and she remembered it. And she's like, your face through this movie, because I'm literally like... What is going on?
Yep.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot. And I was like, oh, I don't think I realized just how fucking 2011 chaotic this movie is. Like, I underestimated it quite a bit.
It's a perfect encapsulation of that time, though.
It is very, very much that. 100%. That did make me laugh. I was like, oh yes, very like little bit post Juno, a little bit more not as Juno, but trying to be a little bit Juno in the horror world. Interesting. I feel like I want to watch it again when I'm a little less like exhausted and hungover from my like just emotionally hungover from my wedding.
I think you should watch it stoned and see if it makes more sense.
I was stoned. It didn't.
Oh. Okay. I'll scratch that idea.
It didn't. I mean, like, I had a great time watching it, but I legitimately was like, was I stupid to watch this high? Like, if I was so happy. I was like, I'm not going to, like, give it away at first because I'm going to be like, oh, I didn't get it. Please tell me Terry didn't either and that I was not just, like, really stoned and dumb. And usually it's not the case, but I was like, uh-oh. And then you're like, oh, yeah, no. I'm like, okay, thank God. I was like, I know I was paying attention, but it just felt like I felt like I was missing, like, 5-minute chunks. And I was like, what's going on? Like, I feel like I'm, like, losing time. Like, am I getting abducted by aliens watching this, or is it just fucking clobbered together?
EL says, to be fair, it sounds like I'd be mad if I didn't watch it high, which...
I mean... Yeah.
Fair.
It's a little, I guess it's, yeah. Now you just go along for the ride and you're not missing anything. It's just...
Joseph Kahn is known for music videos. And this feels like a giant music video.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Like, when I say, like, famous for music videos, I'm talking Mariah Carey, I'm talking BB Rexa, I'm talking Jennifer Lopez, I'm talking Taylor Swift.
Oh, shit.
I'm talking Imagine Dragons, One Republic, Lady Gaga, like...
Okay, wow. So
Eminem.
Oh, shit.
Kelly Clarkson, Katy Perry, like, music videos.
Okay. Because I did not know who he was. I did not know who he was, but oh, wow. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Now that you say that,
I did appreciate that he was making fun of himself though in the movie, because there's a reference to directors or music video directors directing a movie. There's a mention of his previous film Torque, which he makes fun of himself, and I think that's part of the fun. Like I think he's in on the joke. It's just there's a lot happening that my brain was having a hard time keeping straight with everything that was going on.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, what are we watching next week for horror comedies?
Next week, we are watching Trace Thurman's one of his favorite movies, Zombievers.
So excited! This is one of the movies that the company I work for put out, apparently. So very excited to experience this. This was the movie that when my mom was looking up my job was like, did you know that they made a movie called Zombievers? And I was like, yes, mother, I do. She's like, I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Surprisingly a fun
She's
movie,
like, Epic
from
Pictures
what I remember.
Group, right? Zombievers. I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, that's about par for the course for most places in the horror. Yeah. So.
Surprisingly good, though.
I'm excited.
But, so, okay. Little cuts aside, who are we talking with on Monday, Mary Beth?
So on Monday, we are chatting with the costume designer for Freaky, Eyes of My Mother, and the upcoming We Have a Ghost, Whitney Ann Adams. And we are talking about Ghost. The Ghost. The movie
we sure are. And we recorded this a long time ago, and I don't really remember much about the conversation except that it was a cursed recording. So I'm going to have fun editing that this week.
Yay, kisses! Woo! Yeah, that was recorded a while ago. But yay! So, listeners, you've heard from us. We want to hear from you. Right? Am I doing this right? Am I doing this podcasting conclusion right? The conclusion of the podcast. Did you watch a film that we watched?
You take a 2-week break and it's like, what is podcasting?
Everything has left my brain about how to be a normal person. Past couple of days, I've been like, I don't exist in the real world. Today was the first day of my apartment in like 3 days. It was great. Anyway, anywho, did you watch a film or a show that we watched and have thoughts, or just play one of the games we talked about? A game we talked about? Do you have suggestions for things we should be covering? Send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm McKaylee Treadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe, and join us on Patreon, where you could be watching this either live or in a video form. We just launched Fresh Wounds number 3. Megan is missing. So, if you want to hear
that,
Mary Beth's traumatizing story and my first watch of the film,
do it.
Don't miss it.
It's great. Thank you to Eric Parr for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Won't somebody please think of the children? Somebody please think of the children!
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is the briefing room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you
in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.